Zack ignored his father's obstruction and pressed the nuclear bomb controller. The explosion's power swept through the entire city. Eichhorst, who was heading towards the Stoneheart building, was knocked away by the oncoming aftermath. At the same time, F witnessed this scene from a window. Zack quickly took cover upon seeing it, but F foolishly remained in place. By the time he reacted, it was too late to avoid it. Quinlan, affected by the impact but unharmed, slowly stood up and walked towards the coffin that sealed the blood ancestor. The blast shook the coffin open, and the blood ancestor was nowhere to be found. The blood ancestor that were hard-earned to capture were released by Zack. The group didn't know what to do after witnessing this. At this moment, the nuclear fallout in the air began to spread, and they had to leave immediately. Otherwise, the radiation would kill them all. They quickly took refuge in an underground tunnel. On the other side, F woke up from his unconscious state, and his first instinct was to call out for Zack, but there was no response. Meanwhile, Zack had left the Stoneheart building and coincidentally encountered Eichhorst. Upon learning that Zack detonated the nuclear bomb, Eichhorst was pleased and proclaimed Zack as their hero. After saying that, Eichhorst disappeared into the dust with Zack. Meanwhile, the unleashed bloods emerged from various places without the constraint of sunlight. They roamed the streets, slaughtering humans, and the last hope for human survival was completely shattered. 6 months later, F, who had been separated from his companions, lived alone in a small dark room. One day, he went out as usual to search for supplies, but the entire street had changed. Humans were completely ruled by the Bloods, and there were blood patrols on rooftops and streets everywhere. To allow the Bloods to live better among humans, they established the partnership. The partnership could provide medical treatment and food for humans, as well as arrange jobs for them to earn a living, but the condition was that they had to donate blood without compensation every week. For those who resisted, the consequences were dire. At this time, F was walking among the crowd, and he found a vampire in front of him. He quickly ran towards an alley. F entered and discovered an oil tank truck by the Bloods. He sensed something was wrong. He waited for the truck to leave and cautiously approached, only to discover that the tanker was transporting fresh blood. After taking a look around, he decided to leave the area. Later, F came to a place where humans replaced supplies. The people living here were not under the control of the Bloods, and it functioned as a black market in human society. During the exchange between the two parties, F mentioned a tanker truck transporting blood. Neil, upon hearing this, dared not interfere. They just wanted to live peacefully. Bloods received the news and came to destroy this black market. When everyone saw this, they immediately resisted. Although they had firearms and ammunition, the number of Bloods was simply too many. Soon, they couldn't withstand the attack and were captured. Then they were taken to the bus by Bloods. That way, F and a group of humans were transported to the partnership, with 2 Bloods guarding them on the bus. Zack is playing with the feelers. At that moment, Eichhorst approached to give Zack a new toy. After speaking, Eichhorst took out a gun from the box. Zack cautiously held the gun in his hand and asked what it was for. Just then, a shadow flashed by, and it turned out to be a blood ancestor. The blood ancestor said they wanted to take Zack out to play a game. After speaking, the blood ancestor approached to give Zack white blood. Zack immediately knelt down, and the blood ancestor fed him the white blood. Soon, Zack was taken to a zoo. He walked among a cliff and suddenly felt that something was wrong. There was a cage with an open door up ahead. Zack looked up and saw a tiger. The tiger's roar frightened Zack, causing him to fall to the ground. Zack fired several shots, killing the tiger. This scene was witnessed by the blood ancestor. His purpose was to train Zack.
He shot 4 bullets where 1 would have been enough.
There is dark potential in this boy.
At that moment, Zack looked at the tiger's body, and the next second, a familiar voice came. Zack turned around and saw that it was his mother. He immediately rushed into his mother's embrace. Eichhorst laughed when he saw this, as if the conspiracy had succeeded. In reality, the person embracing Zack was the blood ancestor. On the other side, F and the others were being transported to the partnership by the Bloods. At this moment, Neil couldn't bear it anymore. He knew very well that going there would mean certain death. Ignoring F's attempts to stop him, Neil stood up and prepared to resist. However, He was knocked down by the guards and F retaliated. Soon, F was also subdued. It's unclear how much time passed, but F woke up from unconsciousness, fortunately, was thrown out of the car just now, otherwise would have been buried in the flames. F called out for the others, but the bus exploded seconds later. F was thrown several meters by the blast, but fortunately, he wasn't seriously injured. Immediately, F got up and left the scene, but halfway through, he suddenly noticed a man pleading for help. F didn't want to get involved. If he didn't leave soon, the Bloods would definitely come, but the man asked F to save him. After intense internal struggle, F ultimately decided to help him. F first helped the man to a safe place, then took out a backpack and started to stop the bleeding. Through their conversation, F learned that the bus had been blown up by them. He was angry about it. He mentioned that the bus was used by the Bloods to transport humans, and besides him, there were 6 other people on it. The woman expressed her regret upon hearing this. After bandaging the man's wounds, F said they needed to leave quickly, because the Bloods would soon come for backup. Upon hearing this, the 2 of them immediately got up and left the area. On the other side, Vasily was discussing ways to combat the blood ancestor with Abraham. Just then, a voice called out to Vasily, urging him to wake up quickly. Fortunately, it was just a nightmare. At this moment, Vasily was with his new girlfriend, Charlotte. As the day broke, the 2 of them rode their motorcycles on the road. Their mission was to find a nuclear bomb that hadn't been destroyed by the blood ancestor. But after running for half a year, they had achieved nothing. They soon came across a human settlement. Vasily intended to inquire about the nuclear bomb project there. However, these people had malicious intentions. They took an interest in Charlotte and wanted to forcefully claim her. They pulled out a knife and threatened Vasily, but he remained calm. After dealing with them, Vasily's larger group arrived. After getting off the vehicles, they immediately looted all the supplies in the area. It had been 6 months since the last nuclear bomb explosion, and they had traveled to many missile bases. Without exception, all the nuclear bombs inside had been destroyed, but as long as they found one, there was a chance to end the blood ancestors' rule. Later, Vasily and Charlotte went to a field to harvest corn. While they were chatting and laughing, Vasily suddenly realized that Charlotte had disappeared. He immediately searched everywhere, shouting her name, but there was no response. The next moment, he was ambushed and knocked unconscious by a group of people. When Vasily woke up, he found himself locked in a warehouse. He shouted Charlotte's name loudly. Just then, someone spoke up nearby. They advised Vasily not to waste his energy. This was a female gang, and they would keep men locked up and use them as slaves for labor. Women would be brainwashed to join their organization. Unable to escape for the time being, Vasily sat on the ground and started talking with the man. During the conversation, he learned that the man's name was Roman, a staff member at a missile base. Vasily immediately asked Roman if the nuclear bomb was still there at the base. Knowing that the nuclear bomb where Roman worked had not been destroyed, Vasily immediately decided to rescue him. Roman expressed disbelief upon hearing this. Every day, Zack boredly practiced playing the guitar in his room. Just then, a maid walked in. Zack turned off the music and transformed into a shy young boy. The maid said she was here to clean, and the feelers jumped in front of her. Seeing this, Zack went up and gently tapped the feelers, then started apologizing to the maid. He assured her that as long as he was there, nothing bad would happen. The maid gradually calmed down upon hearing this and began tidying up the room. Meanwhile, Eichhorst found the blood ancestor. He mentioned that Zack showed no interest in what they were doing and didn't possess the talent for it either. The blood ancestor responded by saying that great leaders are nurtured over time. Eichhorst was confused by this. Did the blood ancestor want to possess Zack's body? The blood ancestor confirmed that was indeed what he had in mind. Eichhorst disagreed, stating that Zack didn't deserve the blood ancestor's favor.
You question my judgment.
In the evening, Vasily pretended to be unconscious on the ground in order to escape. The female leader immediately approached to check on him. The next moment, Vasily took her hostage. Just as the 2 sides were at war with each other, a burst of gunshots suddenly sounded outside the door. Charlotte took the opportunity to take the gun from the woman's hand and began forcing others to hand over their guns and keys. At that moment, Quinlan walked in, and his appearance startled the women. Subsequently, Vasily mentioned that Roman knew the location of a nuclear bomb, which excited Quinlan. The group immediately embarked on a journey to find the bomb. In the end, they let these women go. To live a decent life, they have no choice but to work for the Bloods and provide blood and food for them every week. The amount of blood donated each day can fill an oil tank truck. After Raoul donated blood and returned home, he suddenly encountered an attack from someone. Thinking it was a robbery, Raoul struggled desperately. However, when he turned around, he discovered it was Gus. The two, who hadn't seen each other for days, immediately embraced. After a brief exchange, Raoul asked Gus what he was currently doing for work. Gus, being cautious, looked around to make sure there was nobody present. Then, Gus revealed the purpose of his visit. He hoped that Raoul could help him infiltrate the place where they worked for the Bloods. Upon hearing this, Raoul was instantly frightened, as being discovered would surely result in being drained of blood on the spot. Seeing Raoul's reaction, Gus played the emotional card. After hesitating for a moment, Raoul agreed to Gus's request. This is the production base built by the Bloods, where they capture women for artificial insemination in order to breed the next generation of Bloods. At this moment, Dutch is also being held captive here. She has been captured for several months but still hasn't conceived. There is still 1 week until her next ovulation period. If Dutch doesn't successfully conceive by then, she will be sent to the slaughterhouse to have her blood drained. Why Dutch was arrested starts a few months ago. When Dutch and Abraham first arrived at the base, they witnessed a group of Bloods arresting humans. Abraham wanted to retrieve the oxytolumen, but Dutch refused. Abraham pointed out that their house was engulfed in flames. Suddenly, Abraham had a heart attack and took out his medication to consume. Now, he was unable to retrieve the book himself and could only request Dutch's help. Dutch had no choice but to embark on a risky journey. She went up from the side of the house, but as soon as she entered the corridor, she met a Bloods eating. Upon seeing Dutch, the Bloods launched an attack against her. Dutch immediately headed towards the room and saw the raging fire. She then opened the ventilation duct above and retrieved the oxytolumen hidden inside. After packing the book into her backpack, Dutch quickly began to flee the building. Just as she stepped out, she encountered 2 Bloods, forcing Dutch to run upstairs. She quickly escaped to the rooftop. In order to evade the pursuit of the Bloods, Dutch jumped to the neighboring building. However, the Bloods continued to chase her closely. Seeing this, Dutch immediately jumped from the rooftop to another platform. Although she resolved the immediate crisis to be on the safe side, Dutch quickly hid the oxytolumen in a ventilation duct. After completing these tasks, she swiftly left the building to meet up with Abraham. Just as she reached the entrance, a bus stopped in front of her. Then a few Bloods got out of the car. Dutch was about to turn and run, but she was already surrounded by the Bloods. In this way, Dutch was captured onto the bus, where many humans had already gathered. While Dutch looked around, she spotted Abraham. Their eyes met, and a sense of despair began to spread within them. In this manner, the two were taken to the partnership. After getting off the bus, they saw a large group of survivors ahead. They were lined up to have their blood drawn, and Abraham felt that this place was like hell.